Welcome back. So Zambia has declared 7 days of national mourning in honor of the country's former president, Edgar Lungu. Lungu, who died at the age of 68, was at the helm from January 2015 until August 2021, when he lost to current President Hakainde Hichilema. The government says all flags will fly at half-mast from the 8th of June till the 14th, and entertainment events will be suspended during that time. Lungu was receiving medical treatment at a clinic in Pretoria. He was suffering from recurring achalasia, a condition caused by the narrowing of the esophagus. Well, earlier today, the Secretary General of Lungu's political home, the Patriotic Front, addressed the media on a myriad of issues that include the repatriation of Lungu's remains. To discuss this, I am joined by Mr. Raphael Nakacinda, who is the Secretary General of the Patriotic Front. Mr. Nakacinda, good evening to you.
Good evening. Thank you very much, and I'm honored to been accorded this opportunity to interact with you, and I look forward to an engaging discussion.
Yeah, I imagine a difficult time, obviously, for the party at the moment. I mean, talk to me about, I suppose, the sense within the Patriotic Front at the moment, and then we'll get into some of the details of what happens next.
Very devastating. We are all gutted, not only as Patriotic Front and the Tonsa Alliance, but as a nation. The people of Zambia mourning is shocking. It was sudden, unexpected. Just a few days or a week before, he was, in his usual humorous manner, decided to have an interview with one of the academicians here, Professor Shua, and it was encouraging for Zambians to see him look healthy, jovial as usual, and very hopeful that he will be returning back home and be able to continue on the journey that he had undertaken to continue to be of service to the nation. Basically, to come and just hear all of a sudden that something has gone wrong, we cannot believe it. Everybody thinks they're just, experiencing a nightmare. Maybe at some point they'll wake up and find that the reality is a little different. So we're in that mode as a nation and as a party.
I do want to get into just the details surrounding his passing, where it was, perhaps some clarity as well, because there are still so many questions around what has happened to the former president. How long was he in South Africa, and your understanding of what it was that caused his death?
Approximately slightly above 5-6 months. He's been here.
For medical treatment?
Yes, for medical treatment. The journey is such that in 2015, he was attended to, here in South Africa. And from then on, he was on some kind of a scheduled process of reviews and being treated and so on. And that was undertaken for the period between 2015 all the way to 2021. When he left office, unfortunately, our colleagues that are in government decided to, without justification or any legal backing, restrict his movements. In 2022, he did indicate that he needed to, go for his usual medical reviews so that his condition could be attended to. Strangely, government did not allow him to travel. Of course, as it were, his attitude has always been never to be combative, but another year passed, 2023, he wrote to government indicating that I think his condition required urgent attention. Government replied and said they didn't have money to facilitate. He communicated he was ready to finance his activities. I mean, this particular, engagement here in South Africa. The government said you cannot travel. And obviously, when you're dealing with a life and death situation, he attempted to travel out of the country. Unfortunately, he was checked in, got even into the plane. Government, law enforcement agencies were instructed to go and pluck him out of the plane. Until 2024, towards the end into 2025, it so happened that obviously because of the many activities that we may not have the time to discuss around abuse of human rights, freedoms of people, and the deteriorating of the democratic space in our country, the UN sent a rapporteur to come and investigate these human rights abuses. So because of the attitude of the government that we have, the UPND government led by Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, we knew that they always play to the gallery. They always want to present themselves a facade of the fact that they are adhering to certain democratic norms and principles. And because there was this rapporteur that had gotten into the country, we said this is opportunity because they'll be inclined not to stop you because they'll be exposed, so that maybe you could be able to be attended to. And that attempt worked. And it's basically sneaked out of the country, got into this place, and immediately got here. And when the medical specialist attended to him or looked at his the first test, they actually pronounced the situation you're in, had you come 2 years or so earlier, would not be where we are. But we'll attempt to try and see what we can do. And that's how he was taken in and went through a very vigorous and quite strenuous therapy. By God's grace, I think he seemed to have been on the mend. But I think among the issues that they were discussing was that outside the process he was going in, he needed some kind of an operation or surgery that he needed to go through.
Right.
But the point to make is basically that I think his death could have been avoided had the right things been done, especially by the current regime.
Okay. Let me stop you because I think there's a lot for us to just unpack with what you've already said. So the former president of Zambia dying here in South Africa, you say is as a result of him sneaking out of Zambia to come to South Africa to get this medical attention. Was there official knowledge that the former president was in South Africa? So having snuck out, did he follow official processes to enter South Africa? Was there knowledge by authorities in South Africa that he was here receiving medical treatment?
Well, of course, he came through the normal channels. When I use the term sneaking out, it's basically because consistently had been stopped from traveling. And the only time that he traveled out and was allowed purely on the basis that there was a critical stakeholder in the name of a UN rapporteur that was investigating human rights abuses. Sure. So to that effect, he took advantage of that opportunity, knowing that the government would be reluctant to expose themselves by stopping him, obviously without any legal backing or any conventional reason for which you would stop, somebody, a citizen, for this particular situation, a head of state from traveling, a former head of state from traveling. So he basically didn't, stop him. But what they did after the rapporteur left was that those that were in duty at the time that he left Zambia were all fired at the airport.
Okay, but this is what I'm trying to get to. The authorities here in South Africa, how much interaction did he have with officials here in South Africa to the knowledge? I mean, surely when you have a former head of state in another country, you would have authorities informed.
It was a private, visit, and therefore, of course, the normal immigration processes were followed. And he, I think, felt that having come in the manner that he came, like an ordinary person, he kept to himself. If there was any engagement with the authorities, it was very remote. Okay. And that was the status quo. And I must say that the whole episode and period that has been here, he tried to keep to himself so that he can basically be with family and be attended to by his doctors. All right.
You've got, of course, the government of Zambia now saying that, flags will be flown at half-mast, declaring a period of mourning for the country. Does that make it easier for the Patriotic Front then to work with government in the repatriation process. So talk to us about where we are with that. Where are the former president's remains at the moment? And your making of the handling of his death, certainly by the government, and especially in the plans towards the funeral.
First of all, we're here because he was our leader. He was part of the Patriotic Front family. And not only as president, I mean, from inception all the way. He rose through the ranks to become president. And I am here deployed by the party as Secretary General to be able to stand with the family and participate in the process of making sure that this whole process goes right. But the family ultimately has the final say in terms of what should transpire. We didn't even expect that government to be interested to do anything with the former president. We know that obviously they have an obligation, but because of the fact that his treatment up to the time that he died was politically motivated, the abuse and so on, because there is so much paranoia on the part of the UPND and their leader, those that are in government, against the idea then that he would basically be the one competing in 2026 against Hakainde Hichilema. So everything that was being done was basically trying to frustrate, that particular possibility. But as it were, with all the abuses, the torment and anguish that was subjected to, the humiliation up to the point of death, they just show up. And we know that obviously the motivation is, the whole episode is very embarrassing to government. The whole episode basically exposes them. But they just show up and say they want to take over the process of handling the remains and repatriating to Zambia. Actually, when they were indicating that they're coming, according to the family, some permanent secretary was supposed to come. Next thing, we're having the current Foreign Affairs Minister, Haimbe, coming into the country and says, we have to take the body tomorrow without any recourse to the family.
Where are the remains at the moment?
Still within jurisdiction of South Africa. And the family are saying, we still have certain processes we are undertaking in relation to the fact that this sudden death, they have to have some answers and closure to that effect. I may not speak because that's a choice of the family. And when there were engagements to which we were invited to witness, clearly there was a fixed position that government was, had taken. The family was saying, no, you can't just come in and, take this position that you're taking. When this man that you want to treat as a statesman, the former head of state, you had stripped him off of all his entitlements, and the way you treated him was like an ordinary person. As a family, and based on his wishes, he would rather be taken back to Zambia like an ordinary person, just like he came. And the family were ready through well wishes and others to be able to take his remains back to Zambia and make the whole process.
So what is the plan now with getting, because, I mean, this is certainly I'm keen to hear what you would like to see from South African authorities, if at all, because a former statesman's remains are right now in South Africa, and the family not happy with the government of Zambia taking over the process of repatriating the remains back to the home country. So what is it that South African authorities need to be doing or saying?
First of all,
and what's the plan?
We do understand that there are protocols around these issues. Obviously, there must have been a note verbal from South African government to Zambian government about what involvement they can get in. But all that cannot be actualized until the family, first of all, arrives at some kind of a mutual agreement with the government of Zambia. But the government of Zambia has taken an attitude of actual bulldozing and wanting to in a hostile manner, hijack the whole process for their own selfish interests. They want to cleanse themselves to try and suggest, at this late hour, that basically they honored this man, they respected him. I don't think the family has any issues with the South African authorities, or indeed any of those that President Lungu worked with and are friends and so on. The issue is between the family, based on the way the former president was treated, and the government, the current government of Zambia. That is where basically issues need to be resolved. Otherwise, the whole process would have been, seamless had, first of all, the government of Zambia possibly apologized over the treatment that he was subjected to, which has led to his death. And possibly also had come with an attitude of suggesting that we acknowledge that we are wrong, and this whole process, I think, is messy, and there is some kind of an attitude of taking, some moment of introspection and admitting that things were wrong.
I'm speaking about South African authorities, though, because, I mean, we have a Department of International Relations and Cooperation that I imagine would be somewhat invested in this process, because it does impact how we relate even with your home country, Zambia. And so the question around the role of South African authorities, what the family would like to do, and perhaps the question is, has the family spoken at all to South African authorities since the passing of the former president?
I may not authoritatively speak to that, but I want to believe that if the authorities here reached out to the family, that would be a totally different subject. At least the information I know and what I've witnessed in my involvement on behalf of the party and the people of Zambia here is that remotely, the only indication that has come to the family around the desire by the authorities here to get involved came through the Minister of Foreign Affairs, where there was an impasse. If there is a direct involvement of the authorities here and the interface with the family, I'm sure the conversation will be totally different. But that conversation I haven't witnessed take place, and I'm not aware that there's any engagement to that effect.
That's interesting. You've got, coming out of that press briefing that you held today, IOL is reporting, and this is the headline that they've written, Edgar Lungu's death sparks outcry, allegations of poisoning and political suppression. Is there suspicion that there could have been a poisoning that led to the former president's death?
I think looking at the fact that among the procedures the family are insisting should take place is basically to establish the cause of death, through post-mortem or indeed any of such procedures by an independent, specialists. Basically, it speaks to the fact that there could be concerns that have been raised by the family. And for us as Patriotic Front and Tonsa Alliance, we stand with the family on that, because I think good closure will require that all questions the family may have may need answers. And we're also interested
allow me to step in in the interest of time here, because I need to get as much done as possible, if you'll allow me. The concerns by the family that his death may not have just been an illness, but as a result of poisoning, where would those have stemmed from?
I may not have all the answers to that effect, but look, I was just indicated to you that personally, I interacted with him on Thursday last week, and he was even indicating, are you able to come this weekend so that we can be able to provide guidance over some of the activities that are taking place home. We have by-elections and so on. Then I told him it may not be easy, it may not be possible this weekend, possibly next week, because I also had some court matters I needed to attend to. Then he says, okay, I have a small procedure I need to, to be subjected to, and then possibly by the time you are coming on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be back home. Boom, the situation is totally different. We may not have all the answers today, but I think the family is just justified to start asking questions to say, how do we, have this situation, all the speculations and all these things, put to rest.
I need to squeeze in one last question before I let you go, and that is, now, what happens now? I mean, the time frames perhaps that the family has given itself to get the former president's remains back to Zambia. Perhaps you can talk to me about that. And is there an investigation, if at all, into what led to his death?
First of all, there's an impasse between the family and government.
Yes.
There was no agreement, but the government has decided to make a pronouncement that they have, quote unquote, honored him with 7 days of national mourning, starting today. As it were, the processes that are being undertaken, there is anticipation that it could end by Wednesday and possibly then repatriate. But looking at the circumstances, it may not, possibly end on Wednesday. Yeah. And if that happens, how does the pronouncement of 7 days of national mourning fit into all these processes? If, for example, the body is to be repatriated beyond Wednesday. Basically, the government is trying to say, as far as we're concerned, you must bury within 7 days. What's the motivation and the hurry to have this thing come to a closure in that manner. There's definitely some kind of malicious motivation around this sort of thing, motivated by political interest. Because when we had this interaction with the Foreign Affairs Minister, he was talking about tension in the nation, people and so on and so forth. That tension they're talking about is not the responsibility of Hakainde Hichilema. It is them that caused it because of the historical background that I've given you. We cannot then be held responsible to try and cure a problem that they created. As far as we're concerned, we are demanding that the right thing be done. Let the whole process and the family be accorded what they deserve and the right they have to make sure that all the questions are brought to a closure and answers provided. Then we can proceed. All right.
I'm out of time, but I really do appreciate you coming into studio as, of course, the party battles with having lost the former leader and former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, Raphael Nakacinda there in South Africa supporting the Lungu family at this time. At the moment, though, the remains of that former president are here in South Africa, the family at an impasse with the Zambian government as to how his remains will be repatriated back to Zambia. But Mr. Nakacinda is, of course, the Secretary General of the Patriotic Front. Thank you so much for your time.